are live. Fantasy Firebox episode, I think it's 19 or 18. I don't freaking know anymore, but welcome everybody in. Tony J. Socotillo, joined by the first ever quad box for the Fantasy Firebox. Joined, as always, by John Coker, bringing back Jason Sullivan and bringing a newcomer in, Mr. Dan Green, making his bow now. Dan has been has been in my ear on my phone with lineups and picks. And finally, I say, you know what? It's time to bring him into the fray. So first of all, I'll go to you, Jason. How was your Thanksgiving? How is everything going? And what's new, my man?
It was great. I had some pretty good lineups last week. A lot of Tyreek Hill, which definitely helped the cause. Went with the Tampa and Kansas City stack in a lot of my lineups, so that really helped the cause. So yeah, good week so far, and looking forward to week 13.
Yeah, man, it was a lot of interesting, I should say, bad performances for a lot of people in week 12. But week 13, let's hope that we see a little more of the norm, not what we've seen last week. But we'll get into that real soon. We're going to get into a lot of stuff. We're talking a little Chris Godwin, a little Austin Ekeler. We're going to talk our normal fantasy roulette, some DFS locks, some undervalued, overvalued bunch of players. Let's just start off right off the bat. I want to start off with the Austin Ekeler because I'm a firm believer. I do not like to start players off of soft tissue injuries. I don't like to start players who, we weren't sure, especially Anthony Lynn, who has consistently just done everything except what we expect him to do when it comes to the running back position. So we had a lot of questions. JC, you remember I had a lot of questions on Sunday. Should I start Austin Ekeler? And I was like, no, I wouldn't start. If you have a viable option, I would start him instead. But if you have to start him, start him. 16 receptions? 16 receptions? Like, are you kidding me? Like, who would have seen that coming? I mean, going forward, Jason, you feel, is he back completely? Are we back on the Austin Ekeler wagon once again?
You know what? I feel like you have to be. Like you said, 16. I think it was 16 targets last week. I had to get 11
16
catches.
targets. I'm sorry.
Anytime you get 11 receptions, a running back getting 11 receptions in a game, that's wild. Woo. So, yeah, I'm all on board for that. He still had 14 rushes. He didn't really do much. I think he had like 45 yards, something like that. So he didn't really do a ton with his legs. But anytime you're getting 16 targets, you sign me up for that.
Yeah, it's the volume alone, right? The volume alone. It's crazy.
And Tone, if I can interject, towards the kickoff time, we got an announcement that Balaj wasn't playing. So that kind of made me kick myself, and I quickly entered him in a few lineups. So from that perspective, he saved me a little bit, but that's where I kind of went against the grain. I'm 100% on board with you. I do not like playing players as soon as I get back from an injury. Like Ertz is coming back this week. Even though it's the Eagles, yeah. I still want to see what a guy can do after coming back from such a hiatus. But he was a beast, and I also texted you during the game. It looked to me, and you guys can let me know if you saw the same thing. When he was running, he looked like he was limping a little bit.
Yeah, you mentioned that to me. You mentioned that to me. I didn't notice that, but
in the game, though, the guy was a beast. So he fought through it, and hopefully he's just going to get stronger each week. I love him this week.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you make a good point about Balaj because that's when everything kind of changed, right? Absolutely. You heard Kalen Balaj was going to play. Everybody's like, all right, we got to put Ekeler in. We have to put him in. I still didn't put him in.
I know.
But I unfortunately, I wrote Dalvin Cook, which again, nothing wrong with that. I paid the $9,200. I upped the ante. Me and Dan, we sat back and forth. How do we get Cooper Kupp in? How do we get and I was so happy I was able to get it, and a lineup sucked.
I had Kamara and Cook in half my lineups. And Murray by himself doubled their totals. It's just one of those weeks. There's nothing you can do. You got to play your studs. If you knew in advance that you could squeeze Kamara and Cook in your lineup, how could you not do it? And my other players weren't bad, but Murray, Murray is where I kicked myself because I was Murray or Hill. And again, Tony and I had this conversation. I said, Tone, why are we in love with Hill when we weren't in love with Gurley? And Gurley's out, so Hill's going to be the godsend for the Atlanta Falcons. So anyway, it's still a value play. So that's from that perspective, you had to try it. But I pulled Murray out of a few lineups for Hill. So that's where you kind of kick yourself.
That's a good call because that's where the value was, right? Latavius Murray. Do you remember, Danny? You remember what number he was at? I don't even remember what number he was at, but it was low.
He was 1,000 less than Hill.
Yeah, I mean, Hill was 4,000. That means you're getting Latavius Murray at 3,000. I mean, that's an unbelievable play.
100, I think 100.
100. Oh, still 3,900, right?
Yeah.
That's still a great play. You have to go with that value. Now, another guy I liked last week was Frank Gore at 4,300. And again, listen, he didn't score a touchdown, but he got 18 carries. He got 3 catches. I mean, he had 74 yards rushing. He had, I think, 2 catches for 12 yards. At $4,300, if I can get a flex play, God's going to give me 10 to 15 points. I'm all in. I don't care if he plays for the Jets or not. There's nobody behind Frank Gore. Nobody. Tyre Johnson got 2 carries last week. Josh Adams got 1 carry last week. Okay, so that means that Frank Gore is the guy. And I'll be honest with you. John, I don't know how you feel about this, but I really think Frank Gore can really be a legitimate flex option going down the stretch, no matter who the Jets play, just for the simple fact, like you always say, John, all about value, all about volume. There's nobody there to take the ball away from Frank Gore, is there?
No. I mean, the P. Ryan experiment never worked out. I don't know. They didn't want to give him the ball in the first place, like all along, until there was too much pressure on him. So look, Gore's back at it. They're getting his workload, you know what I mean? Catching a few balls. That offense is just so bad. I wouldn't be happy with him in my flex. If he's my number 4, number 5 back and I get hit with injuries or whatever, you can plug him in. I'm not going to be happy about it. He has a high floor, but he got a low ceiling. It's not like he's going to burst out. Like the best game you could hope for is 60 yards, 2 catches and a touchdown, which is fine.
Goal
that's
line,
like, that's like the cap. So it all depends what you want him for. I mean, 4,400 ain't bad this week.
You know what's funny about Frank Gore too?
Yeah,
4,400. Wow, go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, you know what's funny about Frank Gore is he's one of the only players in fantasy that's floor and ceiling is pretty much the same. Like he's not going to score less than 10, but not going to score more than like 14. So his floor and his ceiling are about the same. It's kind of
weird. Yeah. You know what though, and like to John, with John's point, I mean, actually both of your point, what John said, it depends on what you want to spend. Listen, if he stays at that $4,000 to $4,500 number, I mean, if you get a guy that's guaranteed 10 to 14 points every single week, sign me up for that. I'm in, right? Because one of those weeks he's going to score. And he is going to give you a 20, and that could be the difference of you winning or losing your prospective contest that week. So I just listen. 37 years old. I just got to tip my hat to him, man. Still doing it, right? Still doing it. Looking good. Still looks good. Still running the rock. Still barreling over people. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if Dude plays next year too. That's what's crazy. Like somebody will pick his ass up and he will play somewhere again at 38 years old. It's just it's mind-boggling. It is. But on the other end of the spectrum, the high play that nobody took last week, which I know I'm in this DFS analyst league, and it's pretty rough. I mean, there's guys from ESPN and RotoWire, and I'm supposed to be repping a station, and a lot of pressure. Dan, you think you were sweating tonight? Every week I put that lineup in. I'm like, all right, here it goes. The first thing Sean says to me on Tuesday, where'd you finish? Like, all right, I'm trying, man. I'm trying, right? So at the end of the day, nobody took Derrick Henry. 20 guys, not one owner took Derrick Henry. And everybody had Dalvin Cook. So what were the odds that Derrick Henry was going to go off against the Indianapolis Colts? I mean, Dan, did you see that coming?
No, but here's where I'm kicking at myself. I hear an echo here. I was so focused on the Pittsburgh-Baltimore fiasco, the whole Denver fiasco, that the Indianapolis Colts lost 2 huge interior linemen for this game. And I found out too late. If you knew that Derrick Henry's going to not have to go against Buckner, and I'm drawing a blank on the other guy's name, I would have slid him in my lineup. But I
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, they two guys with COVID. I even think a linebacker went out. So they had three people up the middle, off the defense. I found out after the fact, and then I was like, oh man, I found it too late. So I mean, obviously, no one expects a guy to score 3 touchdowns, and right there, if you didn't have Derrick Henry in your lineup, you were pretty much blown out of the water unless you had Tyreek Hill in your lineup.
Yeah,
And then one of the leagues where I was doing great, I had Brady, Evans, Tyreek Hill. I'm going up against a guy that had Mahomes, Hill, and Henry in his lineup.
Jeez.
So somehow he finaged, and he had Murray as one of his low end flex players.
Oh,
so
man.
the guy won $100,000, easy.
Oh man, I'll tell you, that's a great call by the Colts. I did not know that. Jason, were you aware of that at all with the lineman going out?
You know, I heard that there was one that was going to be out, and then I heard the second one was out right at the beginning of the game. So, yeah, I was kind of kicking myself, too. I think I played 8 lineups. I think I played him in Derrick Henry in 1 or 2, but I wish if I would have known that, I would have played him in at least 4 or 5. Yeah, wow. I blew it, too, on that one.
Exactly.
I'll tell you, man, this is what people don't understand. I mean, every single one of us here, we have a family, we have children, we have things that we do, but I'll tell you, man, I do a show. It starts at 9:30, and I literally, my Sunday morning now consists, I wake up at 8 a.m., I'm in front of this computer for an hour and a half. I'm ready, and I don't move until usually about 1:45, and that's to take a quick pee break, grab something to drink, and get ready for the red zone at 1 o'clock. It's like, so I can't believe, I'm pissed now that I missed that, because I 100% like you did. I would have definitely put him in, and I probably would have won.
Well, that's what you have to do in today's age. I mean, this year with COVID, you've got to be on your toes. I mean, we're always looking, like, how many of us were waiting to see what's going to happen with Julio Jones up until the last second? Rappaport says he's out. Ooh, that's a relief. I don't have to worry about, making that decision. But with the COVID stuff, you just have to stay on top of things, or a moment like that will pass you by.
No, you're right. It really will. It's crazy how quick. It's crazy not only how the decisions come out, but how quick your strategy can change on the fly. This has absolutely been a year like no other. And for people that can be productive and win, I'll tell you, we have to do a lot of work in order to get a final product on a piece of paper and, to get everything matched up. And unlike any other year, but let's speak of this, keep on the same conversation. And Dan, you mentioned Tampa Bay. Jason, explain to me why Chris Godwin is the forgotten man in Tampa Bay. What is it? Is there too many mouths to feed? Is it just Brady? Is it maybe because Brady's not throwing the deep ball like we all knew that he couldn't? Like, what's going on with Chris Godwin?
You know what's funny? I think there is too many mouths to feed. It's like they have 3 elite receivers, which is a little bit of a problem. It's a blessing and a curse at the same time. Brown's going to get his targets. Evan's getting pretty much all the red zone targets, which leaves pretty much, Godwin's just pretty much the stick mover at this point. He's getting the short routes. He had a decent week last week. I think he had like 96 yards receiving or something. Not terrible, but he's not getting the red zone looks that he was before. Right. So yeah, that's a hard team to figure out. It seems like like I said, Evans is going to get the red zone targets, but he's not doing much else. So yeah, I don't know. I've been having a hard time trying to figure out which one to play out of those guys.
It's crazy, John. Here's the thing. I think Ronald Jones, when you look at him, he looks like, number one, he's a beast. Number two, I think he's probably the most talented player on that team, to be honest with you. I just don't think they use him to the best because they're so worried about Leonard Fournette, even though, he's dropping on. It's like they feel, ownership, or they feel like they owe Leonard Fournette something. I don't know why, but Ronald Jones is just, he's hit or miss to me. He's not consistent. But I feel like he could be. Let me ask this, John. If Ronald Jones is getting 22 to 23 touches a week, is he a top 10 running back for sure in fantasy?
I don't know about top 10. It's about the mouths to feed, what the game plan is. Brady's running the show out there. You have guys all over the place. They have the most well-rounded offense in the league when you look at those 3 receivers with that tight end and the 2 running backs. And you got a guy that could read the field and read the game better than probably anyone active now. I mean, just with his experience. Mahomes may have the better athleticism at this point, but Brady knows how to read a field much better. He just doesn't have the sling, like Mahomes. Yeah. But yeah, you got to get AB in a rhythm. So he's getting 5 to 6 balls. You're looking at Mike Evans for the big hits down in the end zone. You're hitting Gronk up the seam a few times. You know what I mean? Ronald Jones bursts one out. Yeah, there's a lot going on. And, don't forget about Cameron Brate, always showing up to steal a touchdown or something in a clutch time.
Touchdown stealer.
He is. So I don't know about top 10, but I like him. Definitely top 20, top 15, depending on matchup.
Yeah, I just think the way he plays and the style that he has is, he just reminds you of a really, really good fantasy producer. I just don't think they use him the right way, whether it be mouths to feed or not. I think that's one of the reasons why Tampa Bay has been so inconsistent, because their game plan is like kind of off. And we kind of alluded to that a little bit last night on a Heat ratio when we talked about Mr. Laser Tag himself, Bruce Arians, which we'll get that picture out next week. But it's funny, Jason. Like we're sitting there talking, and I'm like, did you ever notice the big like friggin' backpack Bruce Arians is wearing? Like it looks like a pacemaker. It looks like he's playing laser tag. Like he's the only coach in the NFL that does that. And I just don't know why. But
aquarium on his head too.
Yeah, exactly. I remember you commented that. It's so funny. He just looks off as a head coach. But hey, whatever. We're talking fantasy night anyway. Doesn't matter. But yeah, listen. There's a lot. It's like one of those things where Mike Evans is definitely his number one receiver. There's no doubt about it. He goes to Mike Evans all the time. But you're slowly seeing Antonio Brown really starting to take over these games here and there. And I'll tell you what, I think down the stretch, what's going to happen is I think Brady's just going to start airing it out to Antonio Brown all day long, and it's just going to be an Antonio Brown, Tom Brady show. I really feel that's going to be that. To me, that's just going to happen eventually, and I think that's going to kind of smooth things over as well. But Tampa I picked Tampa to go to the Super Bowl. And it's not looking good right now. It's just not looking good right now, without a doubt. And Andre, what's up, Andre? Checking to say Tampa's inconsistent because no one knows who's running the team, the coach or the quarterback. Sounds like something here, Andre. That sounds like a Philadelphia comment, brother. Okay. Oh my God. But anyway,
that's a great point, though. He's absolutely right. That's a good point.
Yeah, you're right. And we didn't. Here's the thing: I guess we looked over that because Brady, and for most of us anyway, is the GOAT. And when you have a guy that's that good, you figure he can go in any system, play under any coach, play with any kind of offensive formula. But it just shows now that him and Bruce are not on the same page. And, and again, it's something that Brady's not accustomed to. It's something that Bruce isn't accustomed to. So they really have to get through this because they have a fantastic defense, even though Todd Bowles has been inconsistent week to week, but they have enough of that defense to get by. So we'll see what happens, especially going forward. Another guy I want to talk about is Alvin Kamara. And it looks like, for some reason, I thought, again, another guy, Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill, they're going to lean on the running game in a sense that the throwing to the running backs, not the handoffs to the running backs. And Alvin Kamara got nothing. If Taysom Hill continues to be the quarterback, which he will obviously until Drew Brees comes back, Dan, do you see Alvin Kamara getting his value hurt that much for the rest of the year?
I do. I think Hill's an automatic vulture as a result of him being in lineup. I mean, he's a running back inside the 20-yard line. Murray statistically only has a few less carries per game than Kamara, and last game in particular, it was garbage time. So why would you even have Kamara in the game at a certain point? He's had injury issues. So yeah, it's definitely a concern. I mean, that's Brees' security blanket. It's not Taysom Hill's because Taysom Hill, he's his own security blanket. So I would have concerns. That being said, you use him if you can. If his value starts to drop a tad, I don't know if he's ever going to drop significantly from that because he's got the rep, but I'd be concerned for sure.
Yeah, I think especially when you take these guys, number 1, number 2, number 3. I mean, you're riding them all year long. I mean, especially we're talking playoff time. I mean, this is for most people, this is your last regular season in fantasy, right? And it's like it's a big decision this week. Like I'm watching the DeAndre Swift news at JC. You're a Detroit guy, so I just can't believe. He's, first of all, he comes out of nowhere 2 weeks ago on concussion protocol, and now we're still unsure if he's going to play from a concussion. 2 weeks, like, is there something else going on that we don't know, or it's just taking a long time for this guy to recover?
No, I think it's just taking a long time. It sounds like he is going to play this week, though. I know he's been practicing, so it sounds like it's trending in the right direction. But yeah, that's weird, really weird. I want to touch on Kamara too, real quick. What you were just saying,
man.
I looked it up right before we started. 8.3 points in 2 games, per game with a Hill. 27 per game with Breeze in there. That's just crazy. It's just like the touches in the running game, like Dan said, the touches in the running game are about the same. He's going to get 14 or 15 carries a game, but the difference is the targets. 3 targets in 2 games with Hill playing quarterback when he's averaging almost 9 a game when Breeze is playing quarterback. So, I mean, they're not involving him in the receiving game at all, which I thought would be the exact opposite, which what they would do, but it's weird. That's
a major problem. That's a major problem. If you're Alvin Kamara number, those numbers that you just read off, that's a major problem. It's something that you really have to keep an eye on. You might have to make a tough decision. I mean, listen, there was another tough decision I got asked a couple times this week, and stick on the same team. And John, I'll come to you. Do I start Michael Thomas or do I start Justin Jefferson this week? And it's like, we thought Michael Thomas was back the previous week. He's getting you 19, 20 fantasy points, and then he kind of lays an egg again this week, right? Justin Jefferson, as much as I love the guy, he's really good, but except, Adam Thielen's back this week. So, and if you look at when Adam Thielen's there, it's week to week with Justin. He's either really good or really bad. So, John, Justin Jefferson, Michael Thomas, this week coming up, who, this is playoff week, week 13. If you had to go with your lock, who is it? Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say that's a tough one.
Truthfully, look, if it's my fantasy team, I'm going Michael Thomas, because if I lose the game, I would rather lose with Michael Thomas in there than with Justin Jefferson in there. You put Justin Jefferson, you're going to kick yourself because you're thinking you're overthinking it if it works out that way. So I stick with Michael Thomas and cross my fingers.
I like that. I mean, I understand it, and I'm usually the same on the same kind of logic. But for this time, I actually go Justin Jefferson, and the only reason is I'm looking at the matchup, and I'm just looking at the overall game plan. I mean, Jason just read the numbers about what the kind of offense Taysom Hill is running out there with Sean Payton. Dan alluded to the same kind of thing. I can't trust him. And if I need a win, I know, as much as I'm not a Kirk Cousins guy, but I just know he is going to air it out enough. Justin Jefferson will be open enough for me. So I would actually go Justin Jefferson over Michael Thomas this week. Dan, what do you think?
I lean more John. I've always had a mantra. You never rest your studs. You got to live with your studs. And Michael Thomas is an absolute stud. But look who his quarterback is. So I get the yin and yang with this, but at the end of the day, like John said, if you lose playing your stud, at least you can sleep at night. And you also said Thielen's coming back, and you don't know what you're going to get either. And both have great matchups this week as well.
They do. I was going to say that you have Atlanta, who's not very good, for Michael Thomas, and you have Jacksonville, who stinks, for Minnesota going up against them. So, Jason, you kind of feel the same way?
Yeah, I do. I think I'd go Michael Thomas. I think a lot of what he didn't do last week was because of that game script. I mean, Denver didn't have any quarterback. So, I mean, all their quarterbacks were out. They pretty much ran the ball. They didn't score any points. So, it was kind of a weird game script. The Saints weren't forced to do too much. They got up, I think it was like 17-0 super early in that game. So, I think that changed what they were planning on doing a little bit. But I'd go Thomas, but I don't feel good about it. And what's funny about Jefferson is that Kirk Cousins has actually been a lot better the past 3 or 4 weeks.
I love this week.
I like him in a lot, and I like him in DFS a lot. But I think season long, I think you go Michael Thomas. You got to stick with the stud, like you said.
It's funny you say that about Kirk because every year, last year specifically, I picked Kirk Cousins up and for a 3-week stretch where he was just on fire. And he's not going to do it all year, but when you can get him in that right slot, he is. And right now, this is another week against Jacksonville. They're not a very good team. They've packed in anyway. Come on, Mike Glennon as their quarterback. They've already fired their GM. They're cleaning house. That team is gone, man. That team is gone. And Mike Zimmer, he's playing for his job. And we also don't know, Dalvin Cook did come out of that game. He got banged up a little bit. Maybe they start they kind of ease back the workload just a little bit this week. They let Kirk Cousins throw the ball a little more. But speaking of Kirk Cousins, I got to give some props. I know it's a fantasy show and we're going to stick to fantasy, but I mentioned Kirk Cousins because I got to give props to Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland. And the reason why is because last year, is one of the reasons Kirk Cousins actually did have a decent year because Stefanski didn't let him throw the freaking ball, right? And because all he wanted to do was run the ball, which is exactly what he's doing in Cleveland. I mean, to see what he is doing and turning that franchise around in 1 year is unbelievable. I didn't think he was that good of a coach. I knew he was going to have the pieces out there. And the reason why I mentioned this is because of Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, again, listen, last week, I let everybody know he's my value play of the week. And he balled out. Then 3 weeks before that, he barely eclipsed 10 fantasy points. Last week, he got over 20. I think it's 258, 2 touchdowns. And I think this week is another Baker Mayfield week. I think it's another good matchup. It's another matchup where he's going to throw the ball more than we're used to. Everybody seems to forget. I understand they don't have OBJ, but Jarvis Landry is very capable of being a number 1 wide receiver. They have a two-headed monster at tight end. Say what you want about Austin Hooper. I still think he's not worth the money. He's still a legitimate tight end. And you have Harrison Bryant that you're actually developing as well, right? You have Njoku that if he could just stay healthy, he's a beast in the red zone. And then you have Hunt and you have Chubb. I mean, everything is aligned for Baker Mayfield. I mean, damn, Baker Mayfield to me. Well, go ahead, John. What, you're laughing?
No, all I want to say is you said, yes, they have all these pieces. What they don't have is a number 1 quarterback. That's the problem.
Wait a minute. What's right? But here's the thing, though. You don't need one. If you're used to listen. That's why I love Kevin. That's why I love Kevin Stefanski. I know it sounds like I'm blowing him, but right, it does. I mean, it does. But the thing is you look at what he does. He knows. Listen, I can't win throwing the ball 40 times a game. So what do? Just like Kirk Cousins, he knew last year he couldn't win throwing 30 times a game. So he zoned it in. He said, "Listen, we're only going to throw 18 to 22 times a game and run the crap out of the ball." Which is why that's why I'm saying, John, I don't think you need that number 1 guy. You don't. Baker could win you a lot of playoff games, man. I'm telling you. You say what you want. John, you know me, right? I'm just telling you, go with your gut, right? Everybody always says I'm nuts. But think about it. If you look at his schedule and you look the way that they're playing, I mean, listen, if you have a guy on your team, say you had Carson Wentz, I don't know why you would have him, but say you had Carson Wentz, or right? Oh, you're not starting Baker. Matt Stafford. I'm starting Baker over Matt Stafford. Every week, I'm starting him over Matthew Stafford. Right?
Well, they're not allowing him to make mistakes. He's gonna thrive off of play action. So they're running the ball nonstop. They got 2 incredible running backs. Oof. And they could just live off of play action. So that makes he's the quintessential game manager with a little flair. And I think I agree. I love him and Jarvis Landry this week. Love them.
I do too. And I know
it's gonna be catch-up ball. It might be catch-up ball too. So you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And you know what's funny with Baker's number on DraftKings? It hasn't changed. Last week he was 5,300. This week he's 5,300. So it's amazing. I mean, he went up in value, but his numbers, are not reflecting that, which is kind of odd. So he's another value play. What do you think, Jason?
No, I agree with you too. I'm a Baker guy, but he hasn't been good in the past year and a half, honestly. And like you said, he just asked to manage the game, which I think that plays to his strong suit. Like Dan said, they have 2 absolute stud running backs. They're going to run the ball, and he's going to throw the ball 18, 23 times a game, which is all he needs to do. And that team's honestly, for whatever reason, better without Beckham. I don't know why, but it was like that a couple years ago, and it's like that now. That offense just looks better without OBJ, which is weird.
That is weird. I don't understand that. I don't, because I know, John, you're shaking your head. You get that? You have do you have something for that? Do you think, or a reason why?
No. I'm
no. The way you were shaking, I was thinking no, because I want to hear it. That's all. I didn't know.
No, I know. I have no idea. I have no idea.
It's odd. It's just really odd when you have a guy of that caliber. He still is uber talented. Say what you want. I don't know what he's going to be now. I mean, you just don't know when you tear an ACL how you're going to come back, which kind of sucks. I was on record for saying that I would have taken him. I would have traded my first round pick if I was the Philadelphia Eagles for him this year in the draft. And listen, I would have had him instead of Jalen Reagor. So I think I would have been making out. But at the end of the day, OBJ, see what happens next year. But yeah, Cleveland, listen, Baker just has to be a game manager. He really does. And if he does that, he limits the mistakes. That's the thing. You can't, because Baker will play hero ball. Right, he definitely will. You will allow him to do that if he does that. But as long as you can zone him in, he should absolutely be okay. 100%.
Let's clarify a little bit. I mean, he's a very good game manager, but he's still. Did you see that throw he missed in the red zone where he had the tight end? I mean, he still makes some very sloppy throws. So yes. Let's not confuse people that he's the next next coming of Kyler Murray. Or actually, he's actually no. I'm not. I don't want to insult Baker that much, like calling him Carson. But listen. We promised not to bring that name up today.
Right. No, I hear you. I hear you.
No, nobody held on hope as long as I did with that guy, but he kicked me where it hurt. But anyway, Baker's a game manager who has to live off of play action. If you're that, my little concern about if you're forced to throw the ball and then the defense isn't afraid of Chubb and Hunt anymore getting the rock and they're waiting for the throw, then you could have trouble with Baker Mayfield. But if he's and they know their identity more than most teams in football. Their identity is to run the ball, like Tony said. I mean, they don't deviate from that, and that's they're kind of mirror. Tennessee to that extent. Tannehill's turned into a very solid quarterback that I know Tony and I aren't in agreement with this. I don't think you should sleep on Tannehill. He is a very reliable quarterback, again, thriving off of play action because of Derrick Henry. I didn't know if you wanted to transition there, but I like Tannehill, and I see similarities between those two clubs.
So Gene's checking in. Gene, it's good podcast, wire to wire. Check it out. I think he goes live tonight. Good dude out there, man. They do some good things. He says Tennessee has no pass rush. They are bottom 3 in sacks in the league. I love the over in that game. So basically what you said, Dan, they're going to be playing. Cleveland's going to be playing from behind. They're going to be throwing up a lot of points probably. Tannehill, make a good point. I'm not in love with him. But I think in these type of matchups, if you could pick the right matchup like this, I think he could be very serviceable, especially at the number that he's getting. AJ Brown, another guy that we're gonna like going into this game, right? Even Corey Davis. Davis
has a value pick with that team.
100%. I mean, we came into this league. We came into this year expecting big things again out of Corey Davis, hoping last year was a mirage. Started out week 1, looked really good. Then he kind of, he didn't have a great week 2. He got hurt a little bit. He come back. Looks like he's being very consistent, which is a really good thing for that team. Are you there? I think did everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now my mic cut out for a second.
Drop the mic on that comment.
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah, right. It wasn't even a good comment too. It kind of sucked. Yeah. But
not like your kicker analysis of last week.
Oh yeah, exactly. Listen, One other guy I want to get into before we start getting into our DraftKings value plays is Cam Akers. And he's a guy that I brought up about 4 weeks ago. If everybody doesn't listen, obviously I do a little thing on Fox Sports every day, and I pick certain guys I like the profile. And Cam Akers is one of those guys. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. John knows, we both are in agreement. The way you get on the field as a rookie running back is you know how to pass protect and you know how to hold on to the ball. And it's something that Cam Akers wasn't able to do. They drafted him to be the guy, but they weren't comfortable with him being the guy. But slowly but surely, the last 3 weeks, he's becoming the guy. And last week was his best week, 84 yards and a score. Now, I understand that we could say it's a committee between Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers, but I am telling you my own belief, Cam Akers is the number one guy on this team. And in the next week or two, it's going to continue that he is going to get the lion's share of these carries. Do you guys agree? John, I'll go to you first. Do you agree? Cam Akers, will he finally be the number one running back for the Rams?
No. No. We're going to continue seeing the exact same thing. Him and Henderson getting about 10 apiece in some way, shape, or form, plus one or two. Brown's going to get a little bit of his. Henderson will get a couple catches. Brown's going to get fewer carries, but more of the goal line, I still think. I don't think anything has changed from what we've seen for 12 weeks. You're rolling the dice with any of them.
I can't stand Malcolm Brown. He just comes in and steals everything. He's not even that good. You know what I mean? Like I can give it that. I like Henderson a little bit. At least he's flashy, but Malcolm Brown's so boring. Like why is he even stealing carries at this point? But I don't know. Jason, you kind of agree with John, or do you think that Cam Akers can kind of be the guy going forward?
You know what? I agree with John kind of. I think the most alarming thing is that, the production was there last week, 84 and a touchdown, but only 9 rushing attempts. That's what worries me the most. Like John said, they're each getting about 10 a game. That's not going to – I like volume at running back. And, just 9 – I mean, he had 5 rushing attempts 2 weeks ago and 9 this past week. That kind of makes me a little bit nervous. I still think it's very much a committee there.
No, that's a good point.
I'll probably shy away.
That's a good point. Dan, you feeling the same way?
I am. I mean, I wouldn't hang my hat on him. He has good value this week. He's 4,500, but I lean towards John and Jason. I wouldn't feel comfortable hanging my hat on that guy.
Well, and the only reason why he had one long run. I mean, outside of that, he's averaging 3.9 yards a carry. He's not catching balls. Like, I mean, that's the reality. He had one run.
It's true.
If you don't get one good run in 40 to 50 carries, you shouldn't even be playing. You know, I mean, you could somehow find a hole. Once out of 50 carries. So it was one.
Good point. No, it's a good point. 100%. It's a good point. So let's
man.
One
more point about him is that, like John just said, only 1 catch in the past 2 weeks. So they're not targeting him in the pass game at all. So he's pretty much one-dimensional, which kind of worries me a little bit.
That is true. Well, I'm glad you brought the passing game up because it's going to segue me right to my next challenge for you guys, and that is staying on the same team. Is Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp the more consistent receiver going down the stretch? Because it feels like it's week to week with these guys. Cooper Kupp did nothing last week. Again, he's elite the week before. I mean, can we try? I don't know who to pick. I don't. I mean, and if you look at the numbers, I mean, they both have decent numbers, but it's the consistency is just not there. And I know a lot of it has to do with Jared Goff because, he has a lot of issues that Carson Wentz has, but he's obviously looked better this year than Carson Wentz. But at the same time, it's so hard to pick one of these guys. And obviously, you're not starting both of them. Now, obviously, if you're a DFS, we're talking a little different, but traditional, I don't think. Did anybody ever start 2 wide receivers on the same team on a traditional fantasy league?
Oh, not traditional, no.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, no. Think about it. Maybe back in the day with like Anquan Bolden and Larry Fitz. Maybe it could have maybe Torrey Holt and
Bruce.
Isaac Bruce, right?
Yeah.
Or who was Indianapolis? Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison, maybe, man.
Yeah.
Carter and Moss.
Carter and Moss. Oh, yeah. There you go. There's a fantasy connection right there.
Just saying.
Woo. Man, that could be electric, man. That could be electric. But Jason, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, who you leaning on?
You know what? I don't think I've ever gotten Cooper Cupp right in 4 years of playing DFS, so I might not be the right person to ask about this. I'll let you know if I'm playing him, and if I am playing Cooper Cupp, you don't play him.
I like this. So if you're playing Cupp, I play Woods. That's the way we got to do this.
That's right. Yeah.
What do you think, Dan? Because me and you went back and forth with this last week.
I love them both, honestly. And when I'm doing my multiple lineups, if one of the wide receiver slots has Woods' price, he's in. If one of the slots has Kupp's price, he's in. But if you're asking me straight up, if I had a gun to my head, I go Woods because they use him in a lot of jet sweep packages, and he's dangerous as a runner too. So he's gotten, so he has that advantage. He's more explosive. Cooper's the more, and you can't even say the possession receiver goes to Cooper because that last game, I think they both, 2 weeks ago, they both caught like 10, 11 balls apiece. So
yeah,
they're both volume catchers when they're on, but I lean Woods. He's more explosive.
Yeah, I like that. I didn't even put together the scenario of being a better runner, which is a great.
He has 3 jet sweeps a game.
Yeah, see, that's something you can't make up for, man. That's like the Curtis Samuels, kind of thing where you're going with that. You know that he could be a runner. I mean, it's a shame, but it's what you got to do. Go ahead, John. What's up?
No, I will say this. Yeah, I agree with the Woods, but if I'm going into, let's just say they played Monday night, and I can start either Woods or Cupp, and if I'm down by 20 points, I'm starting Cupp over Woods. Because I think he has a better chance to explode to get me that win versus Woods. But if you're just talking regular, I would rather have Woods. You know what I mean?
That's crazy. That's a good point, though. It's right. Listen, there was a time last year where Cooper Kupp was consistently putting up elite wide receiver numbers for fantasy football. It was like a 6-7 week period where we're talking is Cooper Kupp elite. I mean, because he had that ability, right? But Robert Woods is coming nowhere. They paid Robert Woods big money with an extension, so they want to get their money's worth. That's for sure. I mean, John, we talk about this every week with your 3 electric guys out there with Deontay Johnson and Juju and Claypool. This week, well, who was it today? Juju scores today, right? You can't predict who's going to get the volume with 3 tremendous guys like we talked about earlier, like Jason said with Tampa Bay. It's so tough to pick, right? So tough to pick. Leo checking in saying, who's your top 3 locks at wide receiver and running back? Leo, I'm glad you asked that because we're gonna basically segue right into our DraftKings segment right now, which is where we talk about our values and guys that we would pay big money for, guys that we would definitely say these are value guys. So I'm gonna start this off. And I'm going to go right into, again, this week, maybe it was me, and John knows, I try to pick out some really bargain basement guys. And we're going to start with quarterbacks. But when I looked at running backs, before we get there, to say, there was like nothing. I don't know why. I'm not sure. Maybe it was me, but nothing stuck out to me. But just going with the quarterbacks and looking at it overall spec. Now, I will tell you this. Russell Wilson has definitely not played up to expectations over the last few weeks. But I think this is the week where he's starting up against the New York Giants team at home in Seattle. Giants team that's hurting a little bit. Daniel Jones is not going to play. Offensively, you have Colt McCoy, which is horrendous. But if you look at the top 2 guys, 7,700 and 7,600, which is Kyler Murray, for me, my lock is Russell Wilson this week. I think he has been quiet way too long. And I know that we have another guy down there. I'm not going to steal from everybody. That's probably going to say is their lock, I can guarantee, because of who they're playing. But I will say Russell Wilson. For me, Russell Wilson is my lock. Now, when we talk about value plays, okay, I'll just give you one. And one of them is Phillip Rivers. And again, I know Phil does not put up tremendous numbers week in and week out. Again, he's averaging 17 points per week, and that's respectable when we talk about DraftKings. But if you look at weeks 9 through 12, I mean, he had 8 points in week 9, but he was playing the Baltimore Ravens. And since then, he's averaging 20. So this week, Phil Rivers, $5,900 going up against the Houston Texans, which they've already packed it in. They have no defense at all right now. J.J. Watt, I feel sorry for him. He needs to go somewhere else to get a ring. It's never going to be in Houston. But for me, $5,900, I'm going to go Phillip Rivers. So, Jason, who's your lock and who's your value this week at quarterback?
So my lock of the week, I think this might be the guy that you were saving for us, Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
3,800. I'm sorry, 6,800.
Yeah.
I feel like that 3,800 would be awesome, but 6,800, I feel like he's underpriced, way underpriced for what he's done. I feel like he should be up the 1 or 2 highest, price quarterbacks for the week. So yeah, that's definitely my high end lock. In terms of value, Matt Ryan's 5,600. I know they're playing against a tough matchup against New Orleans, but 5,600, that seems like a cheap price for him, especially if Julio goes.
Yeah, and Atlanta's always throwing the ball, right? I mean, it's just and Matty Ice is going to throw the rock. It just is what it is. It just depends on what Matty Ice you get. But yeah, I knew when I see I was going Russell. I knew Aaron Rodgers sitting there. That number, I don't understand why it's so low. I don't get it. I mean, you have a Philadelphia Eagles team who's struggling, on a short week for them, going to Lambeau. And I understand that you're not going to have the cheeseheads, but still, it doesn't matter. You're playing in the frozen tundra, man. You're playing in Lambeau, and your team is basically packed it in. Aaron Rodgers is picking people apart right now. So, yeah, that's a great pick. Dan, what do you got for locks and values?
Well, I also want to add that you have the revenge factor, too. Rodgers was not happy losing last year to the Birds.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's a good point.
Add that to the list. I like Cousins a lot. I like Tannehill, and I love Justin Herbert. When has he not scored 20 points a week, at least?
And he can't win a game. It's a shame.
Well, it's not him. First of all, I took notes. I have my Ray Didinger pad right here. I have never seen such a poorly coached game as I did last week. Anthony Lynn is not. I mean, it was some of the things that, I mean, calling timeouts and then punting. It was some of the dumb. It was like early Doug and Andy years stuff. But I love Herbert, and tying into him, I have a love affair with Keenan Allen. If I could put him in every lineup I've ever owned, I would. He's my modern day Musa Muhammad. I just love Keenan Allen.
There's a name, Musa Muhammad.
Michigan State Spartan right there too.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I love Musa Muhammad.
Musa Muhammad.
I digress, but I love
that.
I love Herbert and I love Keenan Allen, and I think Cousins and there's the issue is Cousins. He's stacking with Jefferson probably for value over Thielen.
Yeah. Especially that matchup.
And I think Tannehill is good for 2 throwing and 1 rushing almost every week.
It's funny when you bring up Muhammad. It makes me one of the things I've wanted to do, and now that you brought that up, we're definitely going to do it. So once this football season ends, and again, this fantasy Firebox is going to continue with baseball and basketball, but I would love to do a flashback fantasy draft of guy and give us a 25-year span.
Our best teams over the years.
Yes, and just like the names, the Jimmy Smiths that we're gonna pull out, like just the names that we're gonna pull out, like what Keenan McCardle, who, what, like I mean, this right? I mean, you think about it, you're gonna be like, wow.
Can I tell a quick Keenan McCardle story?
Well, go ahead. What's up?
I interned with the Redskins in '91. And not a lot of people know this. He was a Redskin to start his career.
Really?
He was a free agent pick out of UNLV with the Redskins. And as a lowly intern, I picked him up at the airport. He was shaking and nervous as hell.
Get out of here.
Yeah, 1991, I drove Keenan McCardle from the airport to training camp.
Check that out. You're like a celebrity.
Well, a lot of people didn't know he was a Redskin to start his career.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. So you learn something new every day. I didn't even know you interned for the Washington. The Washington football team.
It was the Super Bowl year. It was hard because I still was a diehard Eagles fan, but I had to wear that ugly, Redskins Garb.
The maroon garb. Oh, that's great. John, who you got, buddy? Who's your lock and value this week at the quarterback position?
I mean, can I just go Mahomes? I mean, you know what? But no, you start
true
looking
though. It's true.
You build around him, yeah.
You look at the price points. Like, would I pay the extra 500 for him over Wilson? Yes. What about the extra 600 over Murray? Yes. 700 over Watson? Yes. I love Herbert, but he's getting to be priced where he should be, where he was big time value for the past 3 weeks when I was riding him.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's creeping up into that 7,000. So he's 100 less than 7,000. Do I pay 1,300 more for Mahomes just to? That's my lock. Kind of a scapegoat way, but that's still my lock. And I kind of have him. I got him in a lineup already. And then truthfully, my value, we touched on the receivers, Jared Goff at 5,800. Under the radar, there's still games where, they don't really need to pass, but it's a winning team. You got 2 receivers like that. And Higbee still hasn't even hit his stride. You got Gerald Everett rushing touchdowns in, the tight end. So, that team's rolling. Look, at that price point, he could be a good value.
And they have to bounce back. They have to bounce back after last week, too.
What do you guys think about Derek Carr at 5,800 against the Jets? Now, I know Derek Carr is not that fancy sensation, and he really put up a stinker last week. But I just, against the Jets, I feel like me or you or any of us could go out there and pass for a couple touchdowns against them right now. But, I mean, would you go Derek Carr $5,800?
If you do, the fear with that is they shut it down early and start running the ball down your throat because it's a garbage game. So I mean, that's the only concern I have. But there's no denying the value. And yeah, he can get 2 or 3 scores in that game. Yeah,
I just feel like, Jason, you got something on that game?
Yeah, I would say absolutely not with Derek Carr. I've played him twice this year. One game he had 4, and the other one he had 9. Yeah, last week he had 4. In every one of my cash games, 4 freaking points.
See, that's just complete violation. See, it's funny because Dan mentioned Keenan Allen, and until this year, Keenan Allen was on my I will never play list again because he screwed me 2 years in a row by either getting injured, I took him high, and he never played, and I just said screw it. I said it's just not going to happen. I said I am not going to take Keenan Allen in any league whatsoever, but yeah, he's kind of redeemed himself this year. Let's go right to running backs because I had a really hard time with this list this week. And what I mean by that is Leo checks and says I'm a Falcons fan and I played Carr last week. They check that out. So he's a Falcon and he played Carr. See? That's right, but he knows his defense sucks. That's what it is. That's you know what I mean. So he already knew. Unfortunately, Derek Carr did not play well at all. But the running backs, to me, there wasn't a lot of value here. So, I mean, just going with the locks, and we've already talked about this. This is Derrick Henry time. We both know it. I mean, I think you can look at the top. What's crazy to me is, you have Derrick Henry sitting at 9,200, and then you have Nick Chubb is the next guy down at 7,700. That's a tremendous drop-off for a guy who I think can have just as big of a week this week as Derrick Henry. So I'm going to say right now, I'm going to go with the against the grain like I always do, and I'm going to go Nick Chubb as my lock at 7,700 this week going up against Tennessee. Because in my opinion, I think he can put up Derrick Henry-like numbers this week. What do you guys think?
I really like Chubb. I was thinking the exact same way that, that price differential for Cook and Henry is just crazy. And but we just talked about Tennessee, and if they're playing down, is it going to be a Chubb game or is it going to be a Kareem Hunt game?
Yeah, Hunt's going to share
carry. What really I'm in the same boat as you. I had Chubb in, and I'm looking at as we're talking about Tennessee. I'm sitting there. I'm like, this might be a Hunt game. And looking at the price tag of Hunt at 5,400, that's a big difference, And 77's a pretty big chunk if you're gambling on game flow.
That's a good point. I did not even think of the Hunt factor in that game. I didn't. I just know that Chubb is very susceptible to breaking off those big 70, 80-yard runs. And I just have a feeling that this is going to be that kind of game where it's like Henry goes for 75. Now it's Hunt for 68, and it's like back and forth. So I'm kind of feeling that. What do you think, Jason?
There's a couple of rules I play with when it comes to fantasy, and it's play Derrick Henry as the season goes along. That's always it always seems to be the way to go. Last year I rode him down the stretch. I'm going to do the same exact thing this year. I liked him a lot better last week. Like John said, his price point last week was, I think, $7,900. So that's a huge jump in price, which he's going to garner ownership, and he's expensive this week. My first instinct was Chubb too, but I think I'm going to roll with probably Derrick Henry and then a lot of Ekeler too as well this week.
I you know what? I like that. I like the Ekeler move. I do. I forgot to mention value, but for me, the only value play that I seen, in my opinion, and again, this is a stretch because I didn't really see anything that stuck out to me, but I don't know how healthy Josh Jacobs is going to be. It's not a high ankle sprain. It's an ankle sprain, so I'm not sure how healthy he's going to be, but I'm looking at Devontae Booker at that $5,300 number going up against the Jets.
I like him too.
Right, yeah, I mean, I just feel like this could be another game that gets out of hand, and they might just say, you know what, why even play Josh Jacobs this game, right? It's just give it to Devontae Booker, who John Gruden loves.
You know what's funny too about Josh Jacobs? I saw this stat. I forget where I even saw it. I was reading the other day. If he has any sort of injury tag in front of his name, he is god awful in fantasy. Like,
really,
it's the most weird stat in the world. But yeah, I read it somewhere the other day.
He's got a Q.
He's got a Q. So he had a Q last week too, and he was terrible. So I don't know. They said check the past 2 years, and it's 100% accurate. So yeah,
check that out. Check that out. So Dan, I see you shake your head for that Booker name. Do you like that value this week?
Yeah, one game I caught with Booker, he would be a nice back on a lot of teams. So he's an athletic kid. I do like him a lot. The backs that I like though for value and performance this week, I really like James Robinson. I just think he's an under the radar, unsung running back this year. He just produces, and I have a gut feeling. I don't know if it's worthy of having a gut feeling, but I think Chris Carson got some of the rust out against the Eagles, and I think he's going to be the man against the Giants.
I listen, not just from a fantasy perspective. I love watching Chris Carson play, man. That boy is tough. Yes, he just runs through walls, man. He's never done. His legs never stop moving. I respect the hell out of him because he's 7th round pick, right? Was he a 7th round pick, or I think he was a late round pick. It might have been 7th round. I'm gonna have to Google that while we go to John because I'm pretty sure that's it. But he's worked for everything that he's been given. Yeah. So I really do like watching him play. John, who do you got? Locks and values, running backs.
Well, yeah, I was stuck on the locks, So I'll tell you I'll go with 2 semi values. Wayne Gallman at 5,600. I don't care. That guy is just scoring touchdowns, and he has the backfield all to his own. We've touched on that enough about volume. Until Gallman doesn't score a touchdown, I want him in at 5,600. And I talked as we were on the show out of Chubb onto Hunt at 5,400.
Yeah.
He's still getting double-digit carries no matter what the game flow is. And if they're losing, it's going to be less of Chubb and more of Hunt. I have them both on the same fantasy team, so believe me, I know how they perform week to week.
I love the Gallman pick. Yeah. And John, you remember this. Remember when we were on this show and I specifically said, and you agree with me, I said, listen, I don't care who Devonta Freeman is. You need to pick up Wayne Gallman because eventually he's going to take this backfield over, whether he's injured or not. He's the better back. Devonta Freeman's done. He showed you that. He had a flash. Right, he gave you a flash, but then when they start to use him a little more, he start getting nicked up again. He start going, now he ain't coming back. He's done. Right, I'm not worried about Alfred Morris. I'm not worried about Deion Lewis. I like Wayne Gallman a lot.
That's a good pick.
You know who's a good value this week too? We kind of bashed on him last week and he had a really good game. David Montgomery. 5,500 against the Lions' awful run defense. That's a smash play for me this week. I think
I
that's
like
a really
that.
good value.
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching that Chicago game, and when he broke off that 75-yard run, and I was like, man, me and Jason are just killing this guy, and all of a sudden he wants to go off for 75 yards in the first carry. I even bet the under on him. It was like 67 yards or something. I was like, there's no way he stinks, and I lost in the first friggin' play, man. I was so pissed, so pissed.
So he's on my best ball team, so I was loving it. I was like running in my living room. I was so pumped.
I love it. I absolutely love it. By the way, Chris Carson, 7th round pick, number 249. I thought it was a late round pick. I was pretty sure it was a 7th round pick. So that man, he is on a mission, 100%. Swinging right over to wide receivers. And I love, this is my favorite category. Like John knows I forget about the tight ends because I fall in love with the wide receivers, right? Because I'm always trying to find those diamonds in the rough, no pun intended, even though it's my segment on Mondays. But I'm looking at, listen, I don't think any of us can disagree and say Davante Adams has to be your lock every single week at the wide receiver position. I mean, I think it's for me. I think it, like John said, starts with Mahomes. For me, it starts with Davante Adams. You put him in and you work everybody else around him. It just doesn't matter. The guy, he gets Aaron Rodgers loves Davante Adams, and we've seen this over the years. We've seen it with Greg Jennings, we've seen it with Javon Walker. All right, we've seen how Aaron Rodgers just zones in on these top guys. Davante Adams is a beast. Whether he's running a slant, whether he's going inside, outside, down the seam, outside post, it doesn't matter. He's doing everything. So for me, he's my lock. Now, value play. I like a couple guys. One of them I like is Keelan Cole with Jacksonville at 3,800. I know it's Mike Glennon throwing the ball. I get it. But Minnesota's pass defense is not very good. 26th against, for fantasy wide receivers. So even though Mike Glennon's throwing the ball, $3,800, Keelan Cole for me. I like it. And I like Denzel Mims at 4,100 for the Jets. And again, I understand that, the carousel they have going around, in New York Jets. Thank God it's not Flacco anymore. It is Darnold. But listen, they're going to be from behind. They're always going to throw the ball. Doesn't matter. And Mims is getting 6 to 7 targets. So for 4,100, I don't think you could do any worse. John, what do you think, buddy?
Davante Adams, I know it's crazy. I'm very interested to see on the Eagles standpoint with Darius Slay and how he just got abused and Jim Schwartz's game plan. Now you're going up against Davante Adams. What are you going to do different? What is this matchup going to be? I mean, that's just more the fan in me than no, I'm not paying that money for Davante Adams. Not this week. Sorry.
What? No way. Really?
9,000 is just a hard thing to swallow. I mean, look, no doubt he's the best in the league, but 2 weeks in a row with 9 targets, that's not going to get you up to your $9,000 price tag. So for me, it's too rich. I will take DK Metcalf at 8,200. That would be the guy that I like. I'm not paying up for Tyreek or Adams, but give me 800 less at DK. I'll go there.
I like it. Dan, what do you got, buddy?
Well, if we're going for value, I love Keenan Allen, and I got Davante Adams in all my lineup. I have one lineup with Adams, Cooper Kupp, and my hopeful sleeper to squeeze in there was Kiki Kuti.
Oh, look at that! I like that name.
So I'm hoping that I think he's 4,500, 3,500. I off the top of my head, I don't know. He's.
Yep, I'm looking at him right now. 3,500.
Yeah, he's a second man now.
Yes.
And I like Corey Davis is 5,100, and Parker and Landry I like as well.
I like the cute when you texted me that I think it was today when you mentioned. I was like, wow, it's great fun because no Will Fuller, right? You saw Randall Cobb, right? But I think Randall Cobb's not going to step into that electrifying.
No, he's out.
Role.
He's out.
Oh, he's out too.
Yeah, he's out.
Even
Kenny
better.
Stills, Kenny Stills,
and don't lean and Stills originally, and don't even think about the tight ends in that game because Indianapolis shuts them down. They've given up 1 touchdown all year to tight ends.
So there goes my. I'm a big Jordan Atkins guy for like 2,500.
No. Well, listen. for that price, let them give up their second touchdown of the year. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, it's a tough play against the Colts defense. They're ranked 4th, I believe, overall in the past.
I didn't know that stat. So that's a good stat to look at because, John knows I hate tight ends. So they're like my last pick every time when I do my lineup. John's always reminded me, hey, can we get some tight end talk in here? Like I'm always forgetting the tight end.
Dude,
Ebron played nice today.
That's a huge money saver. Or, is it worth paying up?
Yeah, I know. I just always forget about them. I'm sorry. They're like kickers to me. What can I say? Just not Jake Elliott, but I'm sorry. Jason, what do you think, buddy? Who you got as your lock and your values?
So for my lock of the week, it's not really too bold of a claim, but DK Metcalf, I just love the guy. He's an absolute monster. I'm going to go Metcalf or Allen in probably every one of my lineups. Yeah. And then for my value, my boy T. Higgins. I know that the quarterback situation is a mess in Cincinnati right now, but T. Higgins at $4,600. It's just one of those situations where the guy's too good for his price, I feel like. So I'm going to be rolling with a lot of T. Higgins this week.
I like T. Higgins. I do.
You stole my Denzel Mims also. So
at least we're thinking on the same page.
I play Mims every week.
Right, exactly. One of the guys that has really stuck out to me, and he continues to be a really good value. I mean, this is a bare bones value, obviously, but Laviska Shenault. Out in Jacksonville, because if you watch him, they use him all over the place. I mean, Dan talked about it with Robert Woods earlier. I mean, when we watch these kind of receivers, I mentioned Curtis Samuel, these kind of guys that could do, they're multifaceted and they're multi-talented when it comes to offensive production. So I love what they do with Shenault, and especially now that Mike Glennon, who absolutely stinks, is quarterback in that team, that they're going to have to do some trickery. So he's going to be doing a lot of different things. Kind of like they use Cordell Patterson, just in Chicago, just a little more. So $3,600. He consistently under 35 and 3,600. So he's another guy you can use for your flex. And another guy before we go, I got to mention is Gabriel Davis. I've been all over him for the last couple of weeks. And to John Brown, I don't know if John Brown's going to play again this year. He's already out again next week. They say he's going to be out for multiple weeks, and looking at this team, he could be out for the rest of the season. So, Gabriel Davis is slowly becoming a really nice go-to guy, for Josh Allen, because Stephon Diggs is obviously he's garnering all the attention. So, he didn't have a great week last week, and who catches the touchdown? Gabriel Davis, another guy you get for under 3,500. I mean, these guys, I love looking at these receivers and looking at these values because there's so many. And if you just hit all one, I mean, you could still get AJ Green for 3,100. AJ Green, no matter who's throwing on the ball, the odds are for 3,100 and getting a touchdown are pretty high.
Yeah,
right?
Oh, yeah, you would think, until I had that same thought last week and he got me a freaking goose egg. So, yes, it makes all the sense in the world, but it did last week and it didn't work out.
So John agrees with the DraftKings value chart.
Well, I'm just saying, I had that exact same mentality. I'm like, that quarterback is going to rely on his old veteran receiver. Has to be a lock as a cheap play. Stuck him in for a big fat 0 in my best lineup.
That is the worst. It's the worst when you get a goose egg. I hate the goose egg, man. 100%. I hate it. Al checking in. What's up, Al? How you doing, buddy? Let's go to John's famous category, and I'm gonna let John start this off. Let's go, John. John, take the tight end way. Take the tight end category away from me, buddy.
Well, look, my lock at quarterback was Mahomes, and I said I'm not paying up for Tyreek. And when you look at the production that Kelsey provides at the tight end position, I mean, he's had at least 8 catches for at least 4 weeks in a row. All right. 3 weeks with over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns during that time. I mean, that's production. I mean, I don't care what position it is. If you get any of those numbers out of Keenan Allen 3 weeks in a row, 4 weeks in a row, I mean, it's well worth the 7,300 price tag. Typically, I don't go that high, but if I'm going Mahomes, I'm pairing him up with Kelsey. But I really like Dallas Goedert at 4,300 this week. I mean, he's the number one guy. We all know that, for the Eagles. And a close second would be Gesicki at 4,300 or 4,200. So
Mike
I like
Gesicki.
if Fitzpatrick plays. Only if
So you don't like Gesicki if Tua plays.
No.
Interesting.
No. I also like Parker if Fitzpatrick plays.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Yeah, I like that. Jason, what do you think, man?
For the tight end position, I'm going to go with my old trusty friend Hunter Henry. He had 10 targets last week, at least 6 targets in each of the last 4 weeks. So I think 4,800 is too cheap for him. He's really finding his stride right now, so I like him a lot. I also, for a value, I like Robert Tonyan, 3,700. It seems like he's really getting involved in the Packers passing game, and I think that's a good cheap stacking option along with Rodgers. So those are my 2 favorite plays of the week.
Especially against the Eagles. And Leo checking it says, is Ertz back off IR? Yes. As of today, he was activated. Him and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. But that's another topic for another day. So it brings up the Goddard effect. Is Ertz, going to overshadow now Dallas Goedert's production? Who knows? We don't know what's going to happen. I still don't trust anybody in the Eagles until I see Carson Wentz play better. It is what it is. So, Dan, tight end position, what do you got, buddy?
Tanyan was stolen from me. Thank you, Jason. I love Tanyan. I like that guy. I like Burton still.
Love Burton.
He's at 3,500. Rudolph is at 3,400, and I don't think Smith's going to be playing. The second tight end.
Yeah, Irv Smith Jr.
Irv.
So, and this is not a value pick, but I like big things from Evan Ingram again this week. He's playing the same defense Dallas Goedert just played against. Now, he doesn't have a great quarterback throwing to him, but I think he's finding himself. And he's there's certain tight ends, like John mentioned Kelsey, which is a brilliant point, to pairing him up with Mahomes. I don't even look at Kelsey as a tight end. There's certain people that they exceed the category, and Kelsey's one of them. So and I agree with you about devaluing the tight end, but not if you can plug Kelsey in there. And there was a time Waller was like that too, but now I've lost faith in him. So right now, if you really take a step back, who is the real dominant tight end in football other than Kelsey right now?
Yeah, because George Kittle's injured, right?
Yeah, so there's just no beast out there other than Kelsey. So that's why it's a brilliant point to devalue tight ends other than Kelsey at this point, because you just got to look at the matchups and go from there. Yeah,
I like diving deep into these low budget tight ends, and the reason why is only because I start off so high. Like, I'm starting with big money guys, and by the time I get down to it, it's like, okay, who's the $2,000 defense? I could care less. I'm plugging them in, whatever. Doesn't matter, because as long as my high money guys produce, I don't care what my defense does, right? But the tight end is where you can get tremendous value. Dan, you mentioned Trey Burton, and Trey Burton was one of my picks this week on a gambler because he is done everything for the Colts, and Frank Reich absolutely loves him. Philip Rivers absolutely loves him. He's always involved in the red zone. They run more two tight end sets than anybody in football, and he's their number one tight end, and he's consistently under $4,000. Consistently. Another value this week, John mentioned him earlier. He hasn't got in his stride yet. Tyler Higbee this week against Arizona, $3,400. To me, another great play. Austin Hooper, $3,800 against Tennessee. A game where I think there's going to be a lot of points scored. So there's, to me, the tight end category, just even though I always forget about it, just tremendous value, from a fantasy standpoint. No doubt about it. But one thing we like to do every week, we play a little fantasy roulette. And we got about 5 to 10 minutes left, and I cut this down. Me and John started this where we were doing 8. I cut it down to 4 last week with Jason. I really liked how that worked, because especially now with 4 of us on the show and having the quad box, it gives us a little extra, wordplay for each one of these guys. I do these images throughout the course of the day and throw them up. So I'm going to throw an image up on the screen, 2 guys, and we'll see what you guys think. Either either or, who's going to have the better week, and that's basically where we go. So we were speaking about the tight ends, so we'll go right to the tight ends right off the bat, and we got the matchup of Dallas Goedert going up against Darren Waller. We mentioned both of these guys, right? We mentioned Goddard, who has been the productive guy for Carson Wentz when he wants to actually hit him in stride, and then we have Darren Waller, who used to be an elite guy, but he's kind of fallen off the last 4 or 5 weeks. So, Jason, I'll start right with you, man. Dallas Goedert, Darren Waller. Who gives us more points this week on the Firebox?
You know what? I'm going Goddard. I like the value this week for him, and I don't like the fact that Las Vegas is traveling across country. I know they're playing the Jets, who obviously are terrible, but I just don't have faith in him right now, especially traveling across country, like I said. So, yeah, I'm going Goddard for sure.
That's a great point. I like that. John, what do you think, buddy?
Goddard, Waller, that offense is, you never know. 1 week, it used to be that Carr would just feed Waller. That was it.
Yes.
Now you got Aguilar showing up. You got Renfro showing up. You got Ruggs making plays. Jacobs, Booker running the ball. It's too unpredictable.
I like that. Dan, what do you think, buddy?
Well, I'm not playing either one of them this week, but
hot take.
Well, yeah, thanks. Yeah, right. I'll break the trend. I'm going to go Waller. I mean, the Jets are 30th ranked passing defense, and the Packers are in the middle of the pack. No pun intended. And I just obviously Waller has more upside. I'm gonna go with my gut and go Waller. Obviously, if we're talking strictly value, you go with Goddard. But if we're talking strictly points, I'm gonna go Waller.
Yeah, I agree with Dan. I got to go Waller because, again, in any facet of the game, if Zach Ertz is active and playing, he instantly becomes the number one target for Carson Wentz. We all remember where he had the electrifying year, with 100+ catches, even though it was for like 900 yards. But,
right.
but at the end of the day, he threw to him 10 times a game. So I just can't see all of a sudden him going away from that. And Dan brings up the good point about we're playing the Jets. That I know they're traveling across country, but they're playing the Jets, who are garbage. They're absolute garbage. So if there's any game that we need Waller to get back on, it's going to be this game right here.
The Jets will wake you up. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They're like Folgers in your cup, man, 100%. Let's talk about wide receivers, man. And we mentioned this guy earlier tonight in Cooper Kupp. I have him up against in the Firebox, Brandon Cooks, who has become the number one wide receiver now because of the PED issue with Will Fuller. So here's what I want to say. Brandon Cooks has had a rejuvenated year this year, but part of that is because there was so much focus on Will Fuller, who actually stayed healthy for once, but now it seems like we know why. But at the end of the day, who do you go with? Do you go with the guy in Cooper Kupp, or do you go with the guy who instantly becomes the number one in Brandon Cooks? John, who you going with this week on Firebox?
Cooks.
That was easy. That's Cooks.
Yeah, Watson's going to throw for yards. He's his new number one receiver. End of story. We already said Kupp is hit or miss. Cooks is the number one on a high-powered passing offense.
I like it. Dan, you agree?
Yeah, I lean Cooks, but again, in these 7th ranked passing defense. But yeah, I mean, he's the featured guy now, so you got to go with the number one over, I guess, a 1A, 1B. You just don't know with Kupp from week to week. But it's not a slam dunk by any means. I could change my mind tomorrow because I kind of have a love affair for Cooper Kupp. He's right up there with my Keenan Allen situation. So if I could have those two, if I could put those two in my lineup, and call it a day and build around them, I would do it a lot of weeks.
I agree. I hear you. Before I go to Jason, I'll just give my pick, and I'll just tell you that I'm going to go with Cooper Kupp. And the reason why I'm going to go with Cooper Kupp is I'm not sold. Listen, Brandon Cooks' biggest issue coming in this year was he wasn't good enough to be a number one receiver without any help. So even though he does become the guy, and even though Deshaun Watson will be throwing the ball, I have no confidence that the first time he gets elevated to that spot, he's going to produce. And I think the Arizona Rams game, there's going to be fireworks in that game. I think they're going to throw the crap out of the ball on both sides, and I think it's a Cooper Kupp week, so I go Cooper Kupp. Jason, what do you think?
Kind of went back and forth on this one a little bit as you guys were talking, but I'm going to go Cooper Kupp too. Like you said with Brandon Cooks, I worry about him being the focal point of the defense. He's getting like 7 to 10 targets right now, but that's with Fuller healthy. So I kind of worry about him as he's getting, the number one corner from the other team and more focus on the defense. So yeah, I like Kupp.
And Tone, one thing that is making me, like I said, I could change my mind tomorrow or actually right now, is again the number one, a top 7 defense and a team that got destroyed by Tennessee. So they need to have a bounce back game in a playoff hunt. So
that's a good point.
So I think that's one reason I think Kuti might have a great day. Because they're going to really try to shut down the number one, but again, it's no slam dunk. But that's a tough one you throw up there.
Yeah, well, I can't make it easy for everybody.
No, I got you.
Yeah. I'm just kidding. But no, good points all across the board. Obviously, that's why we do these things, because it's not just like, hey, I want this guy. It's the analysis that all you guys bring, which everybody loves, which makes these things extra special. So let's go to the running back position. And both these guys got mentioned tonight. Right? It's another good one, another fireball. That's why we call it the Firebox. Right? We have Nick Chubb going up against Austin Ekeler. Again, we talked about, to me, it's a Nick Chubb. I'll just go first. Nick Chubb week. I'm all in on Nick Chubb this week. I think he's going to take he's going to take the initiative to say it's going to be me against Derek this week, and he's going to ball out. I do. I feel like this is definitely a week where he rushes for 160, 170 yards, and he scores at least one touchdown. I feel that way in Nick Chubb. So, no offense to Austin Ekeler, who I think could definitely have a good week. I'm just going with Chubb in the Firebox this week. Dan, I'll come to you first this time, buddy. What do you think? Chubb or Ekeler this week?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Ekeler. Because I think Hunt's going to steal a lot of Chubb's carries this week. I have a feeling about that. I don't deny Chubb can go off, but Eckler's going to catch 8 balls every game.
That's a good point.
So I'm going to go Steady Freddy versus a guy that might. I mean, how many we saw Hunt steal goal line carries when they played the Eagles recently. So I don't know. I'm going to go with the steady guy, Ekeler.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with going steady, man. It's like easy Fred Taylor, right? Steady Freddy. Jason, what do you think, buddy?
You know what's funny? 2 hours ago, I would have said Nick Chubb until John talked me off of him about an hour ago. So I'm going Ekeler too. I love both these guys this week, to be honest with you. I just like Eckler's upside a little bit more. And I think Balaj is out again this week, or trending to be out again this week, and Jackson's out as well too. So yeah, I like Ekeler to get a huge workload this week. So I like him going forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if both those guys are out, I mean, now you're looking at, what do you have, Pope, and you have Joshua Kelly out there, right? I mean, it's not.
Joshua Kelly's terrible. So
yeah, I mean, listen, I just, all I got to say is you just never, Anthony Lynn is such a wild card. You just have no idea what he's going to do week to week with anybody. So, but it definitely helps the situation if Balaj and Jackson are both out. John, I kind of feel who you're going with, but go ahead, let me know who's in the Firebox for you this week.
Yeah, this is a really tough one. I mean, Ekeler, I don't know. I didn't trust him getting the volume that I saw the first week back. It does look like they're content with Kelly being more of their goal line back. Look, Ekeler is not going to get 16 targets a week. All right, let's just lay that out there. I mean, he may get double digits every once in a while. I mean, it was just extreme. So I don't want to pay for last week's production. I will go Chubb, even though I think Hunt may have a little better day. Look, even if Chubb gets 80 yards and gets in the end zone, I mean, that can happen even if, they got to start passing the ball in the second half. So I'm going Chubb.
I like it. I like it. You went with the Chubb love. I love it. 100%. The Chubb love, man. You gotta have the Chubb love. We got to keep it straight. So let's finish up on this. Here's another good one. Right. So again, we talked about both these guys tonight. We have the inevitable Kirk Cousins. Is he going to produce this week in the Firebox against our man Jared Goff, who we just talked about in a matchup where they're probably going to throw the ball a lot. So, John, I'm just going to go right back to you here, man. Kirk Cousins or Jared Goff, who you rolling with this week?
Look, I had Goff as my guy at quarterback along with Mahomes, so I'm sorry. I'm sticking with my guy, even though I really do believe Cousins will probably have a better day. But I'm going with Goff.
Hey, you're being true. You're being loyal. Nothing wrong with that, man. Nothing wrong. The ladies love that. Jason, what you got, buddy?
I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins as well. I think – oh, no, sorry. He went with Goff, so not as well. But I'm going with Kirk Cousins. 27 and 30 points the last 2 weeks. I like the way that team, that whole team in general is rolling right now, and I love his weapons. So Kirk Cousins for me.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jason. I like the fact that he gets Adam Thielen back this week. I like the fact that they're playing at home. I like the fact that they're going up against Jacksonville, who's not very good. And like you said, 27-30. I think this is a 35, 36-point week for Kirk Cousins. I do. I think he's feeling it right now. And then he's going to drop off. He always has these 3 or 4 game stretches, and this is going to be his trifecta, and he's probably going to fall. So I'm going to ride Kirk Cousins again this week. Dan, what do you got between Goff and Cousins?
I have Cousins as a slam dunk. And I love Goff. The reason I always love Goff is because of the Woods and Cupp factor, because generally those guys are always productive. But I love Cousins this week. And I've already plotted him in a few of my lineups.
That's great, man. I love it. I have a
feeling it's going to be a Cook game. Cook or Madison.
It could be, John. You're right. I know what you're saying.
90% of the time, that's what holds Cousins down. Because they want to run the rock, and he doesn't have enough volume to sustain it. You know what I mean? So he's had these 2 weeks in a row, and now, I'm thinking the opposite of you guys. Now you're playing this Jacksonville team. I see it as more of a running attack,
Once the blowout happens.
Yeah, well, who knows? I mean, no, if we knew the way that the games were going to go 100%, we'd be millionaires by now.
Yes, we would.
You know what, though? That's a great point, though, about Cousins. He threw the ball 45 times last week. How often is Kirk Cousins going to throw the ball 40, 45 times? Not very often, right? So do we expect 30,
right?
What he did last week, probably not. Yeah.
But the thing is, though, with Kirk Cousins, I don't think he needs to throw the ball 40 times to score 36 points, because he did that last year. There was games where he was scoring 30-plus points, only throwing the ball 23, 24 times. He was just that efficient. And that's the difference. If he can be efficient, especially down between the 20 and the red zone, that's the thing. I mean, listen, I agree with John. You just never know when they're just going to lean on Cook and they're going to lean on Madison, lean on a running game. But I feel like this is a game where, like I told you, Cook, he got nicked up a little bit last week. I don't know. He did come back in the game. I get it. But at the end of the day, I think this opens up with a long drive. Either it's going to be Thielen or Justin Jefferson with a 60 or 65-yard touchdown right off the bat. It's going to get Kirk Cousins going. And I think it's going to have the adverse effect. I think it's going to keep going that way. And then they run the ball and it becomes a Dalvin Cook show. So I'm going to lean on Kirk Cousins in this one. But listen, either or, I think they both have a pretty solid game from a DFS standpoint. That's for damn sure. But everybody, listen, an hour and a half. I love it. I want to stick to this show under an hour and a half, which was great. We had some technical difficulties in the beginning. I've been working through some things as we are doing a show now. For some reason, for anybody who uses different software, when it doesn't work right, it kind of sucks. So my phones are blowing up. I apologize. There's a bunch of comments that have not come through. I don't know what's going on. But again, we'll get to them again next week. We'll get to them online and bring it on Sundays at 9:30. You can hear being on Fox Sports The Gambler doing a fantasy segment. You can hear Saturday night. My man Jason, what 3-7 last week? Jason on the prop bets.
3-4.
3 and 4, right? 3 and 4, nothing wrong with that, right? Over 50%, you can't beat that. So first ever gives you, in under 5 minutes, quick hits. That's what we do here at Heat Ratio Sports, which is great. As always, John, for being Mr. Calm as always. Just right. He is the calm of the storm. And Dan, for the first time on the show, can't wait to get him back next week. Think he did a tremendous job. I told you, Dan, it's not that tough, man. I'll tell you, it's not that tough.
Let me worry.
I love it. But for everybody, I appreciate, again, Jason, where can they find? Let them know what you got going on, buddy.
Yeah, for sure. All About the Birds. We do a fantasy and gambling podcast every Thursday night, 8:30. And then I also do an article each week for All About the Birds on Fridays with my DFS plays.
Love it, man. Love it. Keep doing some good things. And as always, you can see me and John here, at Heat Ratio Sports. We went live last night. Catch me again tomorrow on The Gambler. Final judgment segment was Tuesday, was pretty good. And then again, Saturday, you can catch me around 10:30 on The Gambler live with Joe Torti and Pat Callahan this week of football, brought to you by Parks Casino. And then on Sunday, I will be on The Gambler studio at 9:30 doing some fantasy football talk. But as always, Leo, thanks. Great show, guys. I appreciate you tuning in, my man. You were one of the comments that actually got in. I do appreciate that. We love the audience. We love the followers. And again, like I always say, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will catch you next.